Good morning, scholars. Miss Bordnaro here. Are you ready to start day 2? Today, we will focus on the second set of vocabulary words, grammar, genre, subgenre, comprehension skills, and a second read aloud of the anchor text. Woohoo! It's time to learn some more vocabulary words. Remember, I will say the word once, then I want you to whisper the word right after me. Then I will say the definition, and you will repeat it after me in your best whisper voice. Ready? Here we go. Honest, truthful, convinced, made someone believe or agree to something. Pointed, used a finger to show where something was. Murmur, the sound of people speaking very softly. It's time for grammar. There are 4 different kinds of sentences. The first 2 kinds of sentences we will learn about are declarative and interrogative. A declarative sentence makes a statement. Statements tell something. Statements that tell something give information about a topic or person. Let's look at some examples. Mammals are animals with fur. The United States is made up of 50 states. I am going swimming this Saturday. Each of these sentences give us information or tells us something. Declarative sentences always end in a period. Interrogative sentences ask a question to find out something. Let's look at some examples. Are dolphins mammals? Which state is the biggest? Whose birthday party is on Saturday? Each of these sentences asks a question. Did you notice the question words that were stated in each sentence? In the first sentence, are, the second sentence, which, and the third sentence, whose. Remember, all interrogative sentences end with a question mark. The next 2 types of sentences we will learn about are imperative and exclamatory. Imperative sentences give commands. Commands tell us what to do. Let's look at a few examples. Look at how the dolphins jump out of the water. Call your Aunt Sharon in Rhode Island. Do a dive off the diving board. Each of these imperative sentences gives a command to do something. Some command words are look, call, and do. Imperative sentences also end with a period. The 4th kind of sentence is exclamatory. Exclamatory sentences use an exclamation to express a strong feeling. They often look like statements, but are spoken and meant to be read with a stronger feeling. Let's look at a few examples. I am scared of tigers. The state of Texas is huge. Amber is already 8 years old. Each of these exclamatory sentences expresses a strong feeling. To show these strong feelings when we write, all exclamatory sentences must end in an exclamation point. Let's review the genre of the trial of Cardigan Jones. The genre of our story is fiction because it is a made-up story from the author's brain. More specifically, the subgenre is fantasy. Now, fantasy is an imaginative story with characters or events that are not real. As you listen, look for story events or settings that could not happen in real life. You also want to listen for characters that act in an unrealistic way. As I read The Trial of Cardigan Jones, I want you to find ways to tie story details together to figure out what really happened. This is called drawing conclusions. A chart like this one will help us gather some details and then form a conclusion. Just like the other day, we are going to become detectives, and we're going to get to the bottom of what really happened. We can do that by using events from the story to help support what we think happened. As we read, we're going to look for at least 3 details in order to draw a conclusion. Now it's time to read The Trial of Cardigan Jones for the second time. Let's be active listeners. Sit up straight, shoulders back, listening ears on. Here we go, scholars. Cardigan walked by Mrs. Brown's house just as she was putting a fresh-baked apple pie in her window. Cardigan loved pies. He walked over and smelled the pie. A neighbor next door saw him, and a milkman driving by saw him too. Cardigan was new in town, and they weren't sure what he was up to. A moment later, Mrs. Brown came back to the window, and the pie was gone. She was so upset, she called the police. She told them that she'd seen a moose just a few minutes before, so they drove around the block and stopped Cardigan. Noticing that he had pie crust on his shirt, they arrested him, even though he insisted he hadn't stolen the pie. A judge and a jury were chosen to decide if he stole the pie or not. The neighbor and the milkman were called as witnesses. Cardigan's trial started the next day. Mrs. Brown took the stand first. "Is there anyone in this courtroom that you saw the day the pie disappeared?" the judge asked her. "Yes," she said, "that moose over there." She pointed to Cardigan. There was a murmur from the crowd. "He did it! He's guilty!" someone said. "We don't know that yet," said the judge. The rabbit then took the stand. "Did you see anyone near the pie?" the judge asked the rabbit. "Sure did," said the rabbit. "That moose right there. He stole it." "No, I didn't," shouted Cardigan. "I didn't steal it, I promise." "Order!" shouted the judge. Cardigan turned, and his antlers bumped a statue and sent it crashing to the floor. It made a really loud noise, and the jury gave Cardigan dirty looks. "Next witness!" shouted the judge. The milkman then took the stand. "Who did you see at the time the pie was taken?" the judge asked. "The moose," he said. "No question about it. He walked right up to the window. His face was practically touching the pie." By now, some folks were convinced that Cardigan took the pie, even though the judge kept saying, "We still don't have any proof." Finally, Cardigan was called to the stand. As he crossed the courtroom, his antlers got all wrapped up in the flag. It took him over a minute to get untangled. "He's a troublemaker," declared a gopher. Others nodded in agreement as the judge asked, "Well, Moose, did you walk up to the pie?" "Well, yes, but just to smell it," said Cardigan softly. "I knew it," shouted a goat. "Lock him up." "Order," commanded the judge. "Order in the court." "But I didn't take it," insisted Cardigan. "Honest." He stood up and his antlers knocked the judge's gavel to the floor. "Sit down," shouted the judge. But as Cardigan went to sit, he bumped the judge with his antlers. The judge fell to the ground. "He hit the judge," shouted one of the security guards. They grabbed Cardigan and started taking him away. The jury members had made up their minds, but the judge stood up and said, Now just hold on a minute. I'm curious about something, he said. Follow me. He walked out of the courtroom and everyone followed him through the town. They reached Mrs. Brown's house, and the judge walked around the outside to the window where the pie had been. Sure enough, there, smushed all over the bushes, was the apple pie. It didn't smell very good anymore. You knocked it off the window with those giant antlers of yours, you silly moose, said the judge, laughing. It was an accident. Everyone immediately felt terrible for being so rotten to Cardigan, and the jury proclaimed him not guilty right then and there. To make it up to him, they had a party in his honor, and Mrs. Brown baked a pie especially for him, even after he broke her favorite vase. As I was reading, I noticed something. From the beginning, Mrs. Brown thought Cardigan stole her pie even though other people were there when it disappeared. I can infer that she is quick to judge people she doesn't know. As we continue to read other texts, please practice using the infer and predict strategy. We have just finished reading a fantasy about a moose who goes on trial for a crime. I can use an inference map to record details and draw a conclusion. Story details are the things characters say and do in a story. One detail is that the milkman sees Cardigan at Mrs. Brown's window. A second detail is that the milkman sees Cardigan smelling Mrs. Brown's pie. A third detail is that the pie disappears soon after the milkman sees Cardigan smelling it. When I put these details together, I can draw conclusions that Cardigan stole the pie. Readers can draw conclusions or make a smart guess about characters and events based on story details. Remember, the author chooses particular words and phrases for a certain effect. By choosing more precise words, an author better shows who the characters are and what they do. Now it's your turn to draw your own conclusions from the text. Pause the video and have a quick discussion with your teacher. Then use the inference map to organize your ideas. Who's ready to put their inferencing skills to the test and demonstrate your understanding of the test? I know you are because you are so smart. Below you will find 3 different comprehension questions. Take your time answering these questions as a class. Don't forget your details. Number 1. What evidence did the police have that Cardigan might have stolen the pie? Number 2. What does the illustration show you about the jury members' feelings? Number 3. After someone in the crowd says Cardigan is guilty, the judge responds by saying, "We don't know that yet." What does that tell you about him? Now it's time to play a game. In order to answer, you must use your fingers. If you think the answer is 1, put up a number 1. If you think the answer is number 2, put up a number 2. If you think the answer is 3, go ahead and show your teacher a number 3. If you think the answer is 4, put up a number 4. Please don't call out. Remember, if you think you know the answer, go ahead and put up your fingers to show your teacher the right answer. Okay, here we go, scholars. It's game time. The sound of people speaking very softly. Is it 1, pointed, 2, murmur, 3, honest, or 4, convinced? That's right, it is 2, murmur. Kiss your brain. Truthful. Is it 1, pointed, 2, murmur, 3, honest, or 4, convinced? Excellent, it is honest. Pat yourself on the back. Used a finger to show where something was. 1, pointed. 2, murmur. 3, honest. 4, convinced. Beautiful job. It is number 1, pointed. Made someone believe or agree to something. 1, pointed. 2, murmur. 3, honest. 4, convinced. Excellent choice. It is number 4, convinced. Kiss your brain. What is the target skill? Is it 1, story structure, or 2, drawing conclusions? That's right, scholars. It is drawing conclusions. What is the genre? Is it 1, fiction, or 2, nonfiction? Good! It is fiction, a made-up story from the author's brain. What is the subgenre? Is it 1, fantasy, or 2, historical fiction? Amazing, scholars! It is fantasy, because fantasy is an imaginative story with characters or events that are not real. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for participating today. I had so much fun learning with you, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Keep up the wonderful work and do your best during guided reading. Bye, scholars!